President Biden, we're hearing now, likely will deliver a speech on the January 6th committee's findings once the House panel wraps up its investigation. That's according to White House officials. Sources say the goal of that speech would be to emphasize what Biden believes is at stake should former President Trump or his allies return to power in Washington. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Josh Lederman. Josh, good morning. A busy week for this president as he returns from the NATO summit in Madrid yesterday. Big news there, but let's talk about this speech first. When do we expect to hear it, and what do you think is the idea behind it? Why would the president do it?
Well, it won't be until after the January 6th committee has finished their probe, Willie. And really throughout this hearing process, we have not seen President Biden piping in from the sidelines with running commentary on every new development from the hearings, shocking as they may be. And that is really by design, because the White House feels like President Biden's use of the bully pulpit on this particular issue is most effective if he is not seen as weighing in on the incremental developments, but instead saves that power of his voice for really the big key moments. For once the major conclusions have been drawn and the country is in a period to reflect on what they've learned, that's when they say President Biden will come in with a speech that they are discussing having after the committee finishes its investigation, where the president can really outline the stakes here, put this in the context of the fight between democracy and autocracy that he speaks about so often, that battle for the soul of America that he and our friend John Meacham like to speak about. And there's another reason that the White House really wants to wait and pick their moments for President Biden to be seen out front on this issue, and that's the Justice Department and Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, already under enormous pressure as many Democrats and even some Republicans like Adam Kinzinger are openly expressing frustration with the slow pace, at least outwardly, of investigations from the Justice Department. The White House wants to make sure they are doing everything possible to inoculate that investigative process from any perception of interference by the White House. And that is why this speech is being planned for after the major conclusions have been drawn by the committee. They've done their hearings, and President Biden can start to use this to frame the midterm elections and the real threat that he will describe if Republicans are allowed to retake Congress and President Biden, former President Trump, would be reelected in 2024, Willie.
Yeah, the White House has been happy to let these hearings speak for themselves for the time being, and we'll try to put a bow on it at the end. At that NATO summit yesterday, Josh, as I mentioned, President Biden criticized the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, said he supports making an exception to the Senate filibuster rules to get abortion rights through Congress. Here's what he said.
I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law, and the way to do that is to make sure the Congress votes to do that. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this, require an exception to the filibuster for this action.
Exception to the filibuster. When asked to clarify, the president said he is in favor of making an exception to the filibuster to protect privacy rights, a central component of the Roe decision. Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema both support codifying abortion rights into law, but oppose changing filibuster rules to do it. So, Josh, here we are again talking about scrapping the filibuster, at least making an exception in this case for abortion rights. The White House, though, careful to talk about it as an issue of privacy rights.
That's right, Willie. And this was one of those moments where President Biden came in front of reporters with some news to make. He knew he was likely to get a question on that and was ready to declare his support for a carve-out to the filibuster for these abortion and privacy rights. He'd previously expressed support for carving out an exception to the filibuster on voting protections. Now President Biden says this should extend to these privacy issues. And when he talks about privacy issues underlining that Roe versus Wade overturn, what he's talking about is the concern that the Supreme Court could go even farther and start to look at other precedents that are also based on those privacy protections, like same-sex marriage, like access to contraception, and even like consensual sex between adults of the same sex. So this was more of a nod to the president's base than any real legislative strategy, because as you point out, stop me if you've heard this one before, Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are still as opposed to a carve-out to the filibuster, even for this narrow issue of abortion and privacy, as they are to any other issue. And that means that Democrats, they don't have the votes to go ahead with this. But we do expect the president to keep pushing on this issue publicly, which is really all he can do right now. And to that end, today, in just a few hours, President Biden will be meeting virtually with Democratic governors from those states that have really rushed to shore up protections for abortion rights in the wake of this Supreme Court decision. It is one of the ways that the White House is trying to cast a focus on how the fight really now does shift to the states, both to those where the Justice Department, others will be challenging some of the restrictions that may be put into place, but also to the Democratic or left-leaning states that are going to protect abortion rights and which are now going to become the safe havens where the Biden administration is bracing for so many women from no abortion states to be traveling to these legal abortion states to seek out care. There are concerns that those states' public health systems could be inundated by that influx of new patients. That is something the White House is also hoping to help states prepare for in the days ahead, Willie.
Another busy day at the White House. NBC's Josh Lederman, thanks so much for capturing it all for us this morning. We appreciate it. Coming up, the Supreme Court strips the EPA of a key tool to control pollution. How that could impact the environment and the economy. CNBC's Brian Sullivan joins us straight ahead on Morning Joe.